Marvin, karibu sana. You're sitting on the hot seat, but on this show...
It feels warm.
Warm, yeah?
Yes.
Don't worry, it gets hotter. It gets hotter with time. It gets hotter with time. But
Okay.
karibu sana, happy holidays.
Sana. Thank you
and,
for having me.
City,
Yes.
I hear you guys are from the same school. Welcome him.
The things you keep hearing, my friend. You don't believe everything you hear. But that little detail is actually true.
True.
Our proverbs for this week come from the state of Eritrea. Okay? Remember what I mentioned? There is Eritrea, which is a Greek town. There's Eritrea, which is in the Horn of Africa. Okay? Spelled slightly differently.
Different.
And, well, a turn of tongue may make it sound as though it's the same place, but it isn't quite that. The proverb: if you hear a madman talking, wait for a minute, and you will soon hear what makes people think he is mad.
Avin, what do you make of that proverb?
Wow. That's quite deep.
Things are deep here, I told you. The city is just getting warmer.
That's quite deep. Normally, what would happen is that, if you were to literally look at it, is that if you were to approach any scenario, if I came here to standard group, for example, and then I was told, do not use this door, use the other one, I might not see any problem with the other door. And if everyone else seems to be using this door, but then I say, come on, that door seems okay, and I try to get into that specific door, I'm likely to discover very soon why everyone else had told me in advance, please use this door. It might bang me, it might electrocute me. So what would happen, the same thing would apply in a lot of other issues in life, especially for young people. What would happen, especially for young people, is that many of them, when senior people talk to them and tell them, this is the way, and kindly let's follow this route, many of them would grow up and say, come on, this looks okay. What is the problem with this? Which is right, because they are supposed to question certain kind of things. And a lot of the times they learn from the experience of why they were being told this is the right way to go. So that would be my, interpretation of the same. But Senior City here will probably tell us whether it is accurate or otherwise.
It's absolutely accurate. We ask you to give us your interpretation of it, and you can't possibly be wrong. Even if you try.
Okay.
Yes. So yes, it's an excellent interpretation.
Thank you.
Yes. Excellent.
Perfect. Now, Marvin.
Yes.
We are talking about from spirit to strength, embracing sobriety. What is ZeROH?
What is ZeROH? Maybe I'll start as follows. I'll start and say that, as human beings, there are two drugs. There are two drugs that are very powerful. One of that particular drug is extremely powerful in terms of helpful to society. And another one of that particular drug is extremely powerful in terms of how equivalently harmful it can be. Now, the drug that is very harmful to society, unfortunately, we have embraced it a little bit more than we should. And the drug that is actually very helpful even to ourselves, many of us have not embraced it as much as we should probably embrace it. So those two drugs, the harmful one, we call it alcohol. And it's ubiquitous, and we love it. It makes us feel good, and we have really embraced it, despite the fact that there are specific, reasonings to show why it can be very harmful to us. The other drug that is actually very helpful, that is actually profoundly powerful, if it were to be a medical drug, there is no medical drug that has equivalent level of capacity. It's called exercise. And this particular drug, very few of us take it with a level of seriousness we should. And those two particular drugs have sort of become, one way or another, my life mission. I run two major brands, 360 Group. One of the subsidiaries in 360 Group is Fitness 360, which is a wellness and exercise brand. And I also run ZeROH. And ZeROH is basically, it means zero, it tries to have zero alcohol harm to society. Zero alcohol harm to society. It's not zero alcohol. We're saying zero alcohol harm to society. So ZeROH is written zero, ZeROH. The H at the end has a meaning. If you attended a good school, like City did, then you will be told that every molecule of something called alcohol has something called an alkyl content and a hydroxide content. Now, an alkyl is, there's two carbons and, some hydrogens growing on those carbons, and then you just add an OH, it becomes an alcohol. But an alkyl in chemistry is just defined as R. So they just put an R to define an alkyl if you did any chemistry, and you add an OH. So if you put ROH, it means any alcohol you can think of. So the R means an alkyl and then the OH. So we put zero. The zero bit, the first zero, of course, was to mean 0.00% alcohol use, but the ROH was alcohol. So that is the meaning of the word zero. And there is probably a history behind it, which we'll discuss as time goes on.
You really thought about this ZeROH subject.
Yes.
But let's talk about 16 years of Marvin Sissey.
You say start from where it started.
Yes.
My story with alcohol starts way back in high school. It starts way back in high school, and I'm happy you've called me here on the eve of Christmas because it also starts within the festivity periods. What would happen is that during a lot of festivities, during Christmas holidays, during a lot of holidays, there is a sense of freedom. There is a sense of liberalness around families, around societies regarding alcohol. Alcohol is seen as a celebratory drink, as something that can make us relax and make merry, and just like that, even for me, where we had as a family unit, although none of us would be drinking, but during Christmas, around festivities, no one would really bother with you if you actually picked a small piece of it. Anyone, you'd be okay. Even your parents would be okay. They would put the guard down, and it's like, it's okay to drink. So I started a little bit of catching up a drink when I was still in high school, I think Form 1, Form 2, during Christmas holidays. But then it caught up on me. And what I mean by it caught up on me is that I started over time starting to like it, and now I was no longer just having it over Christmas. I was now having it a little bit more often on other particular days as well. And, any time I would get an opportunity to. And what would happen is that, especially after high school, I don't know when, as after we finish high school, we used to have 2 years where you are home and you are, either between things. So during that time, for me, I was doing a bit of odd jobs here and there, and I was able to get some monies. And now those particular monies meant that, you don't have a lot of responsibilities, and, you're getting a little bit of money here and there. And it's a good time. You can think, what do I do with some of this money? And part of that was taking back and using it on my alcohol in terms of trying to see this is what you can be able to do. Anyway, to cut the long story short is that I now got to a level where I did not realize it, but it started becoming a problem. So I moved in, and 2 years later I joined the University of Nairobi. and I joined the Chiromo campus. It's to do mathematics. So I'm joining the University of Nairobi, and even when I join as a student, you still have that particular freedom. And I keep on having my normal drink from time to time. So it is not something that I realize is a problem until a bit much later. And what would happen is that I must have been in my third year or so. I was a student. I was involved in student leadership programs. We had I think around the same time I was involved in student leadership programs. We were in SONU, or so to speak.
SONU.
Yes, I think around the same time as the governor of Nairobi, when he was there as well. We were both with him in Lenana and the University of Nairobi at the same time. So we were involved in a little bit of student politics. But campaigning for student politics in UN is very hard. I was campaigning to become the organizing secretary.
What makes it hard? Because you seem very specific. And the implication is that other campaigns are easier. What makes it hard?
I've said that it's hard, but I think it's all campaigns are hard because it's trying to convince people to believe in you is not the easiest of tasks. It is the ability of having to engage with other particular students and everything. And specifically for the University of Nairobi, it has very many campuses. I think they are quite, during our time, you had to travel to all the campuses and make sure that you convince everyone in all the campuses to vote for you, which was not very easy during that time. And during our time, you had to use your gift of the gab. We did not have any other mechanism. Nowadays, I see people being very flashy, but you just had to come out and speak to people and hope that they will listen to you and buy your policies, which is something that is, not there anymore when you look at the national political landscape. But I'm digressing a little bit. So what would happen is that they can also be very stressful. So at one point, I actually thought that I might be losing in the polls or something. We had a place at University of Nairobi. It was called Club 36. Klabu, yes. So Club 36, they have some. They sell some things. If you are a student and your pocket is not very deep, you can afford to go there, and you can be assisted. So there is Club 36, but then there is also somewhere where the current KBC is. It's like a place where there was a joint where you could get things that we were told were tax-free, and therefore they were a bit cheaper. So yes, so there was near KBC. So you'd cross the road. So we'd start by Club 36, have the harder ones, because the harder ones would bring you to a level of, a good level. And then I'll cross the road to over, what is that called, Uru Highway, go towards the side of KBC, so that you could now finish on the brown bottle slowly and finalize as you have a discussion and plan your political issues. So what happened is I had this specific element, which is a tolerance for alcohol. I call it delayed high syndrome. Now, my issue was I could drink, but during the drinking, I would not get high immediately. So when we are drinking, we just drink. And that made me a star in many drinking parties, because it meant, one, I would be the last person standing. And, everyone, you say you cannot compete with that one. But the only problem was not because I thought it was because I was very strong. But that was not the issue. What the issue that was there was that my liver was not able to process my alcohol very fast. But what would happen, therefore, it would take time. Now, the problem was this duration between when it starts processing was not something that you are expected to know. So it could be anything from 3 hours to 5 hours in between. But what would happen is that it would come.
Depending on how the liver feels like.
Depending on how the liver feels like, but it would come. But it would come suddenly, because by the time it comes, you already passed your limit. Yes, because there's a limit. There's something called a blood alcoholic content. And, this is medically defined. There's a particular limit beyond which, if it finds you there, then you are done. So I would get what we call blocks in very inopportune places. So on this specific day, I was having a discussion. I had known about this. So what would happen immediately after my drink? I would rush somewhere so that I would sleep, even if I don't feel like sleeping, because I know it will find me somewhere. But on this particular day, I think we were caught up in conversation and I forgot. So we were just talking, we were finalizing, and, I forgot as we were talking. And later on, I'm crossing Uru Highway just to get back to the university. And that's the last memory I had. So the next memory I had is following day, I'm not feeling very well. I'm waking up with a bit of... I'm not just liking where I am in the room. I'm finding I'm slept. I have muddy shoes. I'm in the room. I'm on the floor. And then around 9 or 10, some few of my friends walk in. And it's like, the way your friends come in and it's like they're holding an intervention for you.
Yeah.
So a few of my friends walk in and tell me, hey, brother, we've come to see how you're doing, but you are not well. Ikitu imekushinda. This thing, it has defeated you. What thing? I'm like, yesterday we came to collect you on just from the other side of Uru Highway, and we thought you were even dead.
You had blacked out.
You had blacked out. So, and you had just crossed the road. Meaning if you had blacked out just a meter before you crossed the road, then you would have been, a speed bump. You'd not be here. This thing is not working for you. So, yeah. So that was the moment, and they really talked to me. They were my friends. They were talking to me in the morning. They told me, Bana, this thing is not working for you. This thing is actually not working for you. And what happened is that I listened to them. You can tell the concern when it's your closest friends and they're talking to you, and you can tell they mean it. So that time, what I did is I just listened. I didn't say a word, but I looked at myself. I was not feeling well. Those symptoms you have the following day after you just finished your drinks. Don't feel the best version of yourself. What I did is immediately, my village is in Vihiga. That's my countryside home. I was brought up by my grandfather, and I decided to just pack up my things and go to Vihiga.
Now, as you go to Vihiga,
Yes.
Let's just pause there first.
Yes.
You go to Vihiga and you're going to grandparents.
Yes.
And you're having a conversation with them.
Yes.
After the break, you tell us your conversation with your grandfather.
Okay.
And it is 35 minutes after 8 a.m. And in studio with me, I have Marvin Sissey, who we're having a discussion around being sober. And this is coming on the eve of the Christmas holidays and also just the festive season as we talk about the importance of being sober. Now, Marvin, it's a question of you've now left Nairobi. It is a concern. You realize there is a problem. You've gone home to be with a grandpa who, for a very long time, has always told you to take care of yourself. What does grandpa tell you the first time he sees you or react?
I don't know what happens with these old people. You remember the proverb we were starting?
Good thing he's not here. We can talk.
They tend to be very, very. They can instinctively sense certain things. You remember the first proverb we had when I came in about the madman, that if someone is a madman, you will soon discover after talking to him after a minute. I think the same thing applied to me. My grandfather was one of the few people who knew that I had a problem with my drink. And the main reason that happened was a number of things. One, he himself, my grandfather, used to have a problem with the drink. He himself, many years ago, and he had stopped. Now, my biological father also happened to have had a big problem with the drink. In fact, in around the year 2004, I buried my father, and one of the main reasons I buried him was because of drinking. So my own father passed away because of alcohol-related issues. So my grandfather knew he had already lost a son. He himself had a drinking problem. He had lost a son to a drinking problem, and he was therefore very worried about me. So the moment I stepped in Vihiga and he saw me, he didn't even say anything. I didn't even get to pack my bag down. He told me, come on, let's take a walk. And we were very close. And now remember, now I told you my old man, my father has passed away. I'm now technically his only son, because now my father was the only remaining son.
Yeah.
So now I'm now my grandfather's son. So my grandfather talks to me and tells me, he called me my son. I never called him grandpa, I used to call him dad. So because of, having grown up together. So he told me, my son, I have lost my son. And you've seen I've lost my son because of this monster. He used the word monster. He said, you have lost my son because of this monster. And I'm not liking the trajectory you're heading. And he told me, this problem you have is something that I know you have, and I cannot blame you because I had the same problem. Luckily, I was able to get out of it. Your father had the same problem. Unfortunately, he had to, he passed away because of it. And now, you are my only hope now, and you have the same problem. You should stop. You must stop. Because I'm now too old. I need you to bury me, not me to bury you. Yes, that was around 2008. What I can tell you gentlemen in the studio is that those words were very chilling. And thankfully, to those words, those were the drink I had at Uhuru Highway, KBC, became my last drink that I've actually managed to drink till death. I've not been able to drink again, and it was only 16 years later. That was early this year that it occurred to me that being sober for these 16 years has helped me so much in my life, and my trajectory of my life has changed to such a great extent that it's made me think and wonder how many other people might not be as lucky as to have, a wise old man in their life who can push them in the right trajectory, who can show them what needs to be done, who can show them what happens and how that is important. And that is why when I sat down and decided, I've been able to set up a successful company, 360 Group. We have interests in many areas, fitness, communications, digital, and many other areas, design. We decided that we set a non-profit arm of 360 Group. And this non-profit arm is going to be specifically handling alcohol harm in society. And we decided that we are going to do our research and understand what is the problem. How is alcohol being treated in society? Where is the issue? And the issue we discovered very fast was that we don't seem to learn that everyone seems to look at there is a carrot and the stick. That's what economists will tell you, that on any issue, there is an incentive as a carrot, an incentive as a stick, and as a punishment. But when it comes to alcohol abuse and addiction, we only seem to have very strongly a stick. We tend to look at the people addicted as, people who are lazy, people who cannot take control of their lives, people who cannot control their alcohol, and we've not gotten time to understand and incentivize them into the correct way. On the other hand, alcohol companies, the selling companies, have realized the importance of how the incentive and the carrot works, and they incentivize and they get their followers in a very good way. So the people who are fighting alcohol and drugs in general, including Nakada and the rest, if you look at all the particular growing some, even everyone is talking about smoking. Everyone talks about, tell people about how this will kill you, this will give you cancer, this will do you what. And that is not the way if you want to get these other people. So there has to be a different way. There has to be a intelligent, sociological, based on behavior therapy, based on science way of how to handle this. And if alcohol companies have discovered this, look at all their ads. You'll never find alcohol ads having their people after they have used the drink using it. No, they'll always have people in different settings.
During.
When they are during and before, or when they're happy. But after, the effects are done. No, those ones, they don't appear in the ads. So when you want to come up with incentivize, when you want to talk to people, what would happen? The first thing which I would like us to probably look at as we work forward is an understanding, which my grandfather made me understand, that alcoholism is not a condition per se that you would say this is happen. It's actually a disease, and it can be cured, it can be treated, it can be looked into. And that's what we are looking at ZeROH. We're looking, how do we do this? How do we help treat this? How do we help our young people get out of this menace?
What would you say is the difference between what we say in Kiswahili, an alcoholic and a mlevi? A drunk and an alcoholic. And if there is a difference, what is it?
A drunk and an alcoholic. Let me, there is a tool, there's a framework. There's a framework that has been brought together by a group of psychiatrists. Now, psychiatrists have this thing called a Bible. They have a Bible that checks up mental disorders. They discover that drinking is actually, it can be caused as a use of drinking can be a mental disorder. So there is an 11 criteria tool.
Is that why they call it a mind-altering substance?
Is
that why they call it a mind-altering substance?
Yes, that is why it's called a mind-altering substance, because it actually it's a disease on your brain, on your mind. So there is a diagnostic and statistical manual. Don't know whether that is a big enough word. I'm getting it correct, City. You are the wise one with words here. Diagnostic and statistical manual of mental disorders. This is 5th edition currently. They have brought up an 11 criteria. How do you confirm whether you have a problem with alcohol and you are not? And these 11 criteria, if you allow me, I would want to basically go through them, because this would be very important. And
yes,
if anyone would be listening, then it would be good for you to take a pen and paper so that you can decide what level of alcoholism are you at.
Okay.
These 11 one are saying, 1, if you find yourself drinking more or longer than intended, you had planned you'll have one bottle or 2, but then you discover that 16 later you are still on 1 or 2. That is 1. The second item they say is, if you find that you have a persistent desire but unsuccessful effort to cut down or stop drinking. Persistent desire in that every time unasema, I'm going to stop this thing. And you try and you can't. And you try and you can't. That is a red mark. Second. Third red mark, they say, if you find that when you look at your day, a lot of your time is spent obtaining, using, or recovering from alcohol issues. That is another third red marker. The fourth one, they say, you find yourself having craving or a very strong desire to use alcohol. Very strong. Fifth, recurrent drinking leads to failure to fulfill major responsibilities. You're supposed to come to work in the morning, you cannot because of a hangover. You're supposed to do something that you're supposed to get a client deadline, you cannot finish because of alcohol. Then on 8, they talk about recurrent use in physically hazardous situation. So if you find, for example, you're driving and drinking, that is a physically hazardous situation. We're also looking at continued use despite physical or psychological problems. This thing is harming you. It's making you sick, but you're still using it. Your doctor has told you to stop, but you're continuing to use it. Mm-hmm. And then 10, which is what I had, you develop a tolerance to alcohol. So that the high, if you needed 2 bottles to get there, now you need 3. If you needed 3, now you need 4. And then now 11, they talk about if you experience withdrawal symptoms. If you do not drink and you feel itchy, you feel shaking, you have nausea. Those 11 are red markers, City. But then they say, this 11, you might not get all the 11 of them. So to answer your question, if all the things I've mentioned here, you can experience 2 or 3 of them, those are called mild. You are just a mild. You are still mild. If you have 4 or 5 of what I've mentioned, City, they say you're now getting moderate. It gets into a level called severe. And you don't like when medical people use the term severe on you, because severe is now 6 or more symptoms. That basically mean you are quite in the deep. So this would be rather than giving you my subjective take, this is the objective take that medical professionals have come up and sent up as their 11 criteria they use to identify at what level of alcoholism are you. Are you functional? Are you getting deep?
The definitions are good.
Yes.
Because they are clear, empirical definitions that one can look at.
Yes.
Unfortunately, there's a social element of drinking.
Yes.
That isn't captured here.
Yes.
And that often is the bigger problem, because in what ecosystem do people get to drink, or in what ecosystem do people get to overindulge? In what ecosystem do people feel the need to continue drinking? Because most people who drink don't drink alone.
It's a social element.
Yes. And in many instances, it is socially acceptable. But there's a guilt element to drinking that is brought about by religion, depending on what someone subscribes to.
Yes.
People are first introduced to alcohol as the devil incarnate.
Okay.
Pombe. Mbaya. So anyone who is inclined towards consuming alcohol is already considered who you
Mbaya.
And this person is lost.
He's going against the...
Exactly. Now,
yes.
When something is socially acceptable,
yes,
it's a lot easier to justify to yourself.
Yes.
Even when some of these symptoms may be apparent, you will find within yourself a reason to tell yourself, it is really not that bad.
And honestly, it isn't.
Yes.
It isn't. That is the first thing. The first thing is that alcohol actually is not that bad.
No, it is not.
There are elements, and there is a continuum where it becomes. Because even religion, at one point in the good book, I'm not an expert in the good book.
I can tell you, it's in the book of Timothy when.
You have done better research than me. I think 5:23.
When Paul was saying that you should take a little wine.
A little wine is good
for the stomach.
For the stomach, just for the stomach. Yes. Exactly. So it's good you mentioned that, City, because on our policy and sociological framework and some of the research that we've done on this and ZeROH, there are 2 elements that you need to be able to understand on these aspects. One is that as ZeROH, we have decided to approach that. One way of tackling alcohol abuse would be through what I call behavioral therapy. Behavioral therapy would to have an understanding socially. What is the understanding around drinking? What causes drinking? How does it work? And for us to get the behavioral therapy, we actually first had to understand, what does alcohol do to your brain medically or biologically? What does it do to your brain that makes it socially understanding? Now, alcohol does 2 major things to your brain the moment it gets into your brain. Firstly, it does what we call, it enables what we call inhibitory, there are enzymes.
It's a disinhibitor.
Mm-hmm. You get? Exactly. Yes. So the inhibitory enzymes that would actually inhibit you to certain things. You get? And then there is an excitatory framework within your brain as well. There is an excitatory framework that excites you on certain things. So you would want to imagine if your brain is at a road, traffic, and there are cars in your brain. And these cars, you have traffic lights. You have green to show you go, and you have red to show you continue, and you have what? So what happens is that your body has naturally a traffic system that works much better than our traffic system, that tells you when certain cars are coming, this is time for you to stop, this is time for you to go. Now, what alcohol does, it basically messes up with that. It will show you green when it should have been showing you red, and it will show you red when it should have shown you green. So there are certain things that it would inhibit. It would make you relaxed. on certain elements because your body is now feeling a little bit relaxed because it's a depressant. And that relaxation would make you more socially, you find you are likely to get better self-esteem. So what does that do? The main reason, City, that has happened in terms of alcohol being socially acceptable is that alcohol increases our confidence and self-esteem by the things that would have inhibited us, the things that would have made us a little bit too self-aware. By depressing those ones, we are more likely to speak freely. And therefore, one way of looking at it is to try and see, is there a way in which we can get people to be more confident? Is there a way in which you can get our young people to have more self-esteem without needing the need for a kick for them to get to that particular level? And then, City, you also mentioned another very important aspect, which is religion. Now, NACADA released a report about alcohol prevalence in this particular country. Now, everyone tends to think that, Mount Kenya region is the major area that actually has the highest prevalence of alcohol. You'll be surprised. The NACADA report says otherwise. Yeah. It's actually in my homeland, Ingo. Yeah. Western has the highest prevalence of alcohol. Now, from my constituency, where I come from a Misi constituency. It's a very unique constituency. It is a constituency that has the headquarters of a lot of these independent churches. If you've ever heard of a church called Pentecostal Assemblies of God.
Headquarters.
Yes, the headquarters are called in Nyang'ori. They're in Hamisi. PAG. If you've ever heard of a church called Africa Israel Nineveh, they are in my neighborhood, Jabrok. That's where they're headquartered. If you've ever heard of a church called Divine Church, Africa Divine Church, ADC, they are very colorful. Even the president the other day I saw he was converted and he was among them beating drums. Very colorful Divine Church. Yeah. They are headquartered within a Misi constituency. If you have another church called Quakers, Africa Friends, the Friends Church, they're headquartered in Kaimosi. Still, all of it is in one constituency, Hamisi, which is a constituency within Vihiga County. Now, from my country, where I live, in my countryside, in a village called Kapchemwani, to the nearest shopping center called Jabrok is 3 kilometers. From where I live to that 3 kilometers away, I can count 13 churches of different denominations. 13 different churches of different denominations within a 3 kilometer mark. And yes, you are right, all these churches, City, have said no, they are not necessarily, they fight against alcoholism. Alcohol is bad, we don't accept it. But you know what? Within that particular constituency, NACADA says it is one of the highest prevalence rates of usage of alcohol within the country.
You will also find that there are other atrocities.
Yes.
Like gender-based violence.
Exactly.
That is also very high in that particular.
Now, this is the challenging bit. Despite all those churches there, we do not have a single rehabilitation center. Not within just the constituency, but within the whole county. 0 rehabilitation center. So what are we saying? We are saying that we have to relook at this element about alcohol and try to understand what do we need to do in order to change the conversation. We should not make it guilt. We should not make it anonymous. We should not make it something that it's a conversation we need to have.
Let me tell you one thing though.
Yes.
This is a 2-hour conversation.
I hear you.
You're going to have to come back. Our time isn't up, but it's heading there because
yes,
we have merely touched the tip of this conversation, because problems with alcohol arise from exactly what you've said. It is not a topic of discussion that people talk about in the open.
Yes.
And the issues are not looked at, the good and the bad. Not all and the bad, because there are good elements to it, but the focus on the negative. And that you bring in the church. It reminds me of a field I worked in for the longest time, and where communication, or the lack of appropriate communication, was part of the problem.
Yes.
HIV and AIDS care and treatment.
Yes.
For the longest time, it was equated with death. That didn't move the needle. It didn't. It didn't. Because after a while, someone decides, let me get fatal, I will die. So where's the problem?
What is the problem?
Yes. Yeah. And I think, City, this is a great place to close the conversation. Like we said, it cannot happen in an hour. But I want you to just speak to Kenyans, those who are listening to us, because it's the festive season. People are going to make merry. There are those who say, now is my time to imbibe. You know, sisi ni wale wase. I just want you to spend a minute, talk to them and wish them a Merry Christmas, festive season. A minute.
Kenyans, this is what I would like to say. As we make merry, as we have fun, as we celebrate our holiday, as we try to usher in the new year, I would say that the best of things happen in moderation. Have whatever it is that you want to have in moderation. Whether it is water, have it in moderation. Whether it is food, have it in moderation. Whether it is going out to drink, have it in moderation. Whether it is having whatever it is that you're doing, have it in moderation. And in that spirit of moderation, I wish everyone listening to have a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, and as City said, let's keep on having zero sober conversations about this particular topic. You can visit Go Zero, that is Go Zero with an H at the end, .org, and we can start this particular conversation and continue having specific discussions about this. For now, thank you very much.
City?
No, thank you. Thank you. This is a conversation. We are going to invite you again.
Yes.
And we will ask people to call in because it is important.
Okay.
It's an extremely important conversation, and thank you for coming.
Karibu sana.
It is 28 minutes to the top of the hour, 9 a.m. This is the Situation Room. Good morning.